Benchmarks are fun, right? How do you compare against your competitors? Are you beating them or are you underperforming? Well, I'm going to go through some benchmark data with you that was released by Wordstream. They looked at over 17,000 campaigns, looking year over year at things like click-through rates, cost per clicks, cost per leads, conversion rates, and so forth. So I'll go through some of this with you and break it down and give you some feedback as well from my perspective and what we're seeing here at Step Group for our clients. And if you don't know who I am, my name is John, and I'm the CEO of Stub Group. We are a digital advertising agency and Google partner, and we help businesses dominate Google Ads and make money online. All right, so let's take a look at these benchmarks. First of all, big caveat or grain of salt that I'm going to throw out there is whenever you look at benchmarks, they are inherently an average of a bunch of different things. And so you could say that, hey, our click-through rate is X%. Well, that's including a lot of different variety. Campaigns that have great click-through rate, campaigns that do not have good click-through rate, targeting different geographic areas, fill in the blank. You know, there's a lot of things that go into performance at a specific account level. So these benchmarks are interesting, potentially helpful to look at, but don't think that they are prescriptive. Don't think that, oh, if my click-through rate is worse than what this says the benchmark is for my industry, then I must inherently be doing poorly. Because, hey, maybe you are in a very particular geographic region where that's just the reality of how people are searching in your area. And maybe you've got different competitors in your area than the most companies that are a part of this benchmark. So again, benchmarks, cool, interesting, helpful, but don't take them as prescriptive for how your campaign should be performing. So let's take a look. At a very high level, these are the averages that Wordstream found. 6.42% click-through rate. That's just a percentage of people who click on ads after seeing the ads on the search side of things. So this is for Google search in particular. Cost per click on average, $4.66. Conversion rate, just under 7%. Cost per lead, just under $67. So let's kind of dig in a little bit further here. All right, so click-through rate. We see, according to their benchmarks, an increase in click-through rate year over year. 70% of the industries they looked at saw an increase year over year. That is not too surprising to me, as we see Google is always testing new ways to get people to click on ads, to make ads as relevant as possible, to encourage those clicks, and to eke out as much money as Google can from their advertising. So I think that's part of it is just Google constantly tweaking and tinkering with how ads display and when ads display. And then also, hopefully, it is a signal of advertisers continuing to do better and better jobs of creating ads, leveraging Google's machine learning and AI to show the best ad combinations, the most compelling combinations at the right time, and all those different factors combining together. We also see cost per click increasing for most industries. And that is, I think, somewhat impacted by inflation, just the reality of what's going on in the marketplace. I'm sure it's also impacted by Google trying, again, to make more money and having incentive to spike things as much as they can, kind of behind the scenes. There's been a lot of conversation related to that that's gone on with the different antitrust trials and things that Google's been going through recently. And then there's also the reality that there's so much competition in the space, and there's always new advertisers coming into the space trying to capture the traffic and the audience that is on Google. And so the more competition there is, the more cost per clicks go up. So I think that's a part of it as well. Other factors, of course, but across the board, largely speaking, we see cost per clicks increasing. We also see conversion rates decreasing, according to Wordstream's reports, for about half or so of the industries they looked at. Now, this, I think, is one of the things that could be most skewed whenever you look at benchmark data across many accounts, because it's up to every advertiser to decide what they call a conversion. One advertiser might say, hey, someone got to my website, I'm tracking that as a conversion. Another one might say, hey, only if someone fills out a form or places a phone call. Others might say, no, not unless they actually get into our CRM and they're marked as a sales qualified lead, or anywhere in between. So it's always tricky when you look at benchmark conversion rates. It's very hard to say, well, I know a good conversion rate is X because of those different variables. But it is interesting to see a pretty significant drop across the board. And part of that could be related to Google continuing to push more and more broad match keywords, which are not inherently bad. Yeah, I'm not living in 5 years ago where I might have said, almost never do a broad match keyword. There definitely are situations where broad match keywords can work well. But there's also the reality that Google is consistently pushing out to broader and broader, let's say, relevancy of search terms that they're matching to your keywords that you're targeting. And so that could have an impact on conversion rates as well. Cost per lead, according to Wordstream's data here, increased for a similar number of industries, a little bit more than the number where the conversion rate decreased. Makes sense, obviously, if conversion rate decreased, and what they're counting as a cost per lead is going to increase as part of that, especially if cost per clicks are going up at the same time. Again, take all that with a grain of salt for all the reasons I mentioned earlier. But the trend is that advertising is expensive, and that there's more and more competition always, and that if you really want to stand out from the pack and not just be at the benchmark, but be one of the better performing outliers that brings the benchmark to a better place, you have to be really strategic and smart about your advertising, about who you're targeting, what you're saying, when you're saying it, how you're deciding your bids, what you're tracking as conversions, how you're feeding that data to Google, so forth and so on. And that's the type of stuff that we like to work on with our clients and try to make sure that we are getting the best bang for their buck in this crowded marketplace. So we'll put a link to these additional benchmarks if you want to scroll through further and read more. Always, helpful, interesting to see what's going on in the market across a bunch of campaigns. And hopefully you found this overview helpful as well. Till next time, this is John.